Hello, let us talk about things.
There we go. All right, cool. All right, so Purple's our intro. And I guess real quick to introduce everyone for those who are on the audio feed here, we are doing a kind of an informal, we call them Let's Chats, and we probably are going to start trying to do some more of them this year maybe. But right now it is myself, Blue Crew 86. We have Green Eyed Music Lover. Green, you still there with us?
I don't know. Am I still here?
Oh, yes, she's still there. Cool, because you left me last weekend, and
I'm sorry.
Was
my sister's thing was
and it was terrifying, and I did it all by myself.
I wanted chocolate cake. Dang it! No, I was back in Kansas for my sister's bridal shower because she's getting married in April, and
bridal shower, not bachelorette party.
Not bachelorette party. You had that in your head for like 3 weeks that I was going to a bachelorette party, and I'm like,
I even said that in chat. I was like, it's not a bachelorette party, just so everyone knows that's what I was worried about.
Yeah. Green is going and partying it up with her sister who's 7 years younger than her.
Hey, I'm not judging. I'm judging a little bit.
It was good, though. I got to spend some time with my family, and Trudy got a lot of good stuff. Towels, tons of towels and all that stuff that you need when you first get married that you don't generally think about. So, yeah, it was productive for her and fun for me.
Yep, I got it. Good now.
Well, then also with
phone
us.
Off, and then I put it back on his. It's got like a wireless charging station.
Yeah.
So I turned his phone off, and then I put it back down, so it like turned back on again, and I was like, ah.
Well, also with us tonight we have Purple, because Purple was really, really excited to chat with us about one of her favorite topics ever. She loves writing objective summaries about this topic. Purple, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm awake now.
Yay! Sleep is good.
And then like what we'll do also is I will try to get this up on YouTube as quickly as possible, as well with most of our Let's Chats. We are obviously going to be releasing this as an audio pretty quickly afterwards, as fast as I can get it edited, basically. So really, I mean, there's not a lot of house cleaning. If you guys want those, housekeeping notes, just tune in on the Thursday or the Friday stream, and we'll fill you in on all the other stuff. But I really kind of think we should just jump right into the information, because we got actually quite a bit of information.
Yeah, we did.
Yesterday.
So, yeah.
My days are blending together.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, for those of you who are in the future, yesterday was the release of The Last Word Quest, which means we got the release of 2 new books, the Book of Unmaking and Letters from a Renegade, which are both amazing and also disturbing in many different ways, which I'm sure we'll chat about, but that's also the quest. As of about 3:00 this afternoon, I'd gotten my last word, so yay, one of us has completed it. Mm-hmm. Blue's working on his right now.
Yeah,
as we speak.
I kind of want to. I really actually want to give a big shout out real quick to John Goff,
Bungie.
Bungie. You guys did it. You made me actually turn on Destiny 2 again, because I saw the. I'll be honest. I was like, oh, okay. I kind of was explaining this to a couple people on Twitter today too, because they obviously the topic of me not playing Destiny 2 came up. And they're like, why don't you play it? And it's mostly because of mechanics. And I'm as a pretty strong, like, avid solo player, it's tough to play a game designed for social, like designed to be built around a social group. It's just tough from a mechanic standpoint. Absolutely love the story. Absolutely love everything. But then Bungie did the thing, and they posted a picture of the shirt that you can get with the last word. And I was like, well, I hope that I can get everything done being 100 light level below, because it's going to get done. And yeah.
Sure, most of it you can. Most of it, I think you might have to be a little bit higher level to do the last mission. But everything else is pretty straightforward. It's like a law sector and
I'll be honest, I'm on the second to last step right now. And if that doesn't tell you how I wouldn't say easy, but I mean, you just said, I mean,
accessible.
Accessible. Like, you just have to be adaptable. Like, that's the thing, is like, I know there was a lot of complaining on Twitter, which, you know, surprise, Twitter was complaining about something, but
it's 500. You can totally do it. Black Flag says last level's 500 for
you. Yes. All right, so chat just made my night even better. But like, I don't know, like, coming from Destiny 1, where I played from day one of Destiny 1, you know, not to kind of toot the horn there, but there was a lot of quests from Destiny 1 that were significantly more difficult than the steps that are so far in this quest. Like
Thorn?
The original Thorn. Okay, the original Thorn required you to use Void, and as a hunter, you didn't have a Void subclass. So
you had to get Void kills.
You had to use a single weapon slot to get Void kills. Crota. Yeah, I mean,
that's what everybody used back then.
That or Atheon's Epilogue, which was my go-to, because that thing was like a freaking bullet hose, and it was a laser pointer. But I mean, what I'm saying is, like, there has been a significant growth in the game as far as like accessibility with these quests. And I'll be honest, as a person who has not played Destiny 2 for probably a couple months now, getting back into even PvP to get this stuff is not been, I don't know, I've been not upset about it. It has definitely taken some patience, but it's nothing, I don't think it's anything that a couple hours of reconfiguring your brain to figure out a different way to do it. I don't know. I've been really happy with it. Yeah.
The last quest is kind of a pain, so keep your patience.
Oh,
it
yeah,
took me 15 deaths to get through.
Yeah, I think it was Ramshackle said that it was
she
like
had 50.
30. Yeah, 30 plus or something. So
it's some fine tuning on that last one, but the step that everyone gets stuck on is the very last steps. Thank God. I was worried there was going to be another one, but yeah, it's a good quest, and it's an interesting quest as far as lore goes, because think about the step that everyone's really kind of talking about, the whole PvP where you have the pushback. If you kill somebody, you get points, but if you die, you lose points.
I love it. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I love it. That was actually that particular step was actually one of my more enjoyable ones.
It really made me feel the dredgen aspect, because you're gathering light. You're stealing light.
There's that, but it also, like, for me, one of the things that it actually made me have to stop and think, which, you know, for a game that's been out for, what, a year now, 2 years now? I feel like it's been forever since it came out. But for a game that's been out for so long, the PvP aspect has really, for my particular play style, has just been kind of, I jump in, I play, I don't really think about it. And so to have that challenge where it's like, you know, like the one that I'm running right now is the you have to get blood for blood or best served cold, I believe is the one. It's the revenge, basically. You either avenge or you get revenge, or you avenge the death. You know, it's a change in the way that I play. And I think that's a really cool thing too, because like what you're saying for the lore thing, it's a change in the way that your guardian is using stuff too. And I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. The other thing I really like is how the entire quest feels like you're going for Thorn, and then all of a sudden it's not Thorn. I love that little twist there at the end about that, because I think it brings into question some stuff about the Drifter too.
It brings into question stuff about the Renegade as well, especially towards the end.
Yes.
Of the book.
Yeah, well, and the Renegade, I was mentioning this to a couple people. The other cool thing about the Renegade is that with the letters, you see actually some growth in him. Like, you see some growth in the Renegade in the sense that he used to operate on a black and white realm. Like, his world for the longest time was black and white. You were either good or you were bad. And that was all that mattered. And then he encountered us, and we when you complete this quest, you basically are, like, you know, I guess obviously spoilers, but like you're in the process of creating a weapon of sorrow, aka Thorn, and then you purify it at the end and create the last word. So I find that, first off, I find that really interesting, and there's a number of connections there. But the thing that also begs is that you brought something that was steeped in darkness and brought it into the light. And so for the Renegade, he says, you know, that's one of the things that he talks about is like, you're not black and white. You kind of are transcending that division, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, the last piece that you have is called Conversation, which I also thought was interesting, because the last quest you do is the Draw quest. And it is you are proving what we talk about, how, I'm trying to remember which aspect where we're talking about declaring yourself, declaring yourself ahead of the other person, or better, not necessarily better, but it's like, oh gosh, it's not sword logic, it's not bomb logic, but it's similar in some respects, but that the draw, you are proving yourself to be able to step into those shoes. Interestingly enough, I want to say it's the last card in the Letters from a Renegade, he talks about how the last word can be called forth by anybody. And let me see if I can find it.
A gift and a touch of gray.
Yes.
He says, the gun came to you. How does it feel in your grip? Few can light its fire, but any reborn of the light can call its name. That's a secret I'm bound to hold. Just know you've earned it, and you've earned it true. The cannon you hold is yours, but it is no replica. It is a gift from a friend.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is, when you're in that last battle, which I also thought was really super interesting, if you get killed, which you will, unless you're a god, if you get killed by the guy, you will die. If you don't die on the first try through, I want to see a clip. Because, it's rough. But, when you die to the standoff, essentially,
is it Enoch or something?
I don't know how to pronounce his name, but yeah, he's the weapon master, the hive weapon master, and you stand on a plate, you activate the plate, which tells you to basically be steady, and it's summoning essentially the last word for you to use against him. And what he's getting ready to draw is what's called a proto-thorn. And it's a one-shot kill. So if you miss, he'll kill you. And you basically have a standoff. As soon as his hand moves, you have to be faster, and you have to knock his, spoilers. We were talking about spoilers. The way you kill him is you knock the gun out of his hand. You don't actually kill him right. By like a headshot. You have to knock the gun out. You
push him back.
Yeah. And each section, there's 3 different sections you do. The first time is a singular guy.
You
knock it out.
Inkar is his name.
Inkar. Thank you. First time you knock it out of his hands, it takes his health down to 3rd. The second time, you're dealing with 2 of them, and you have to knock them out both before they kill you. Which, granted, they fire separately. Thank goodness. There's like one after the other, and then the 3rd one you have to knock out all 3. And the second time, on the second group, you take out another 3rd, and the last one you finally take out the final 3rd. And there's 3 of them, and it's a pain in the butt because the order in which they spawn matters.
Mm-hmm.
because that's the order in which they're going to fire as well. Which means if you get, like I did, on the time I actually finished it, I got really, I don't know if I just got really lucky or I just kind of focused in or whatnot, but it spawned middle, left, then right. So I had to actually jump back and forth and knock them out.
So
that was
I guess that would be a pain.
And they are random spawns. Like I had them left to right, I had them right to left. But yeah, they can spawn in any order.
Yeah, and Pins actually says what I really appreciate from letters. He says, in reading letters from a renegade, we do see growth in Shin, but there is a distinct feel of a father giving advice to his son. And I think that's important because Shin is basically he's basically becoming the Jaren Ward to our Guardian.
Yes. Although, now, Purple, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I don't know. I've read through everything, but I haven't analyzed them yet. Shin isn't dead at the end of this. He calls it his final act.
No, he's not dead.
No. I do think it's interesting that he, like, until this moment, we didn't have any concrete evidence that he was still around.
The Callum thing, I mean, technically that could have happened a long time ago, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't know. It could be. But, like, in Letters from a Renegade, he, like, explicitly makes a reference to Cade's death.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, our reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, clearly he has to be around to see that happen in order for him to, you know, write us a letter about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it does bring into question some stuff we were talking about the other week with a Drifter's Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were talking about who is he writing these letters to, or who's he talking to? It could be that there's a higher chance now that he's actually talking to us.
Yeah, definitely. As far as, like, in the Drifter's Gambit, you think he's talking to us?
Yeah, well, so in a Letters from a Renegade, they are literally like he signs them, right?
Right.
But if you go to a Drifter's Gambit, it's all in quotes, right?
Yeah.
And so,
it's
like,
almost more of a conversation between him and somebody.
Right, like he's kind of monologuing, and then it's got like a tagline because it's a transcription.
Right.
But it could be that he's just talking to us.
Right.
You know, he seems to want to give us a lot of information, so that would make sense.
Well, and the other thing is like in a Drifter's Gambit, you can also argue that some of it is a conversation with him and Shax.
Yeah.
Because there's parts where he's talking to, I mean, I would argue that there is at least one entry in a Drifter's Gambit that it is Shin talking to Shax. Because there is a part where he is talking about the Red Jacks clearing stuff and getting stuff ready for a Gambit match.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I mean, I guess maybe our Guardian could be that individual, but it just makes a lot more sense in my head that is a particular conversation that he had with Shax, because that was also Shax is kind of leading, or Shax is letting Gambit go on kind of almost behind the Vanguard's back even.
Right.
And that's kind of, I see that as being a machination by Shin to use the Drifter to, you know, further his own goals, in the same way that the Drifter is kind of using Shin, or the quote man with the golden gun, to further his goals. And I know there's a lot of theories about that whole relationship. sadly, from the lore books, we don't get a huge amount of information about the Drifter necessarily. We do get confirmation about Shin, and then the Books of Unmaking is more information about the original the original shadows from the eyes of Tebin Gray.
Yes, and he's the one who's writing the journals.
I love it. I love it.
We also get a little bit of perspective from Ursa, but it's from Tebin's perspective. Like, Tebin's the one who writes it.
Yeah, he's
Ursa is there.
He's quoting Ursa, I think, if I remember that one correctly. Or like he's like paraphrasing what Ursa was saying.
The whole time, see, this is a weird thing about the Book of the Unmaking, because like the letters from a renegade, he's writing a letter to us. They're like, here's the letter, I signed it. Like, whatever. But all of the Book of the Unmaking are tagged with hand-scrawled note accompanying Tebin Gray's personal translation of the ancient high text.
Right. Well, he's talking about that. Like, he talks about what he's doing with it, because they're transcribing the stuff that's on your ship.
But just really quick to interject, this also gives us the explanation of where that really annoying quote on Thorn, where that comes from.
Yes.
That everyone has been losing their minds since Destiny 1, because it's the 7th Book of Sorrows. We actually get the location of that quote.
Well, why there's seven.
Right. Why there is a 7th book. Yeah, like it explains where that quote comes from, and it's actually not from the Hive.
It's from the Shadows.
It's from the Shadows, which makes a ton of sense. But it's their translation of the arcane scripture of the Hive with their own thoughts. Like it's like I don't really know how I'm going to say this next thing without pissing off some group of people. But like it's like taking taking fill in the blank. It's taking an X religious text. So, whatever religious text doesn't make you that angry. And then looking at the way that, if I pick one, it's going to piss someone off. So I'm just going to let you guys pick it.
Okay.
So but if you look at the way it travels through history, the translations for it, for instance, I am more familiar with this particular religion than I am with anything else. So I'm going to go with this one. But if you look at the process of Christian texts, as it travels through different geographical regions and it goes through different languages, from like, for instance, from Greek to Roman or Greek to Latin, that was a big leap. You lose things in translation. You gain some stuff, but you always will lose stuff in translation. And so depending on how, faithful that translation is, you see this in even philosophical texts, any of Martin Heidegger's work of Being in Time, for instance. If you can have two different translators work on that book, and you will come out with two different passages for the same passage.
Well, sure, it's not even with just philosophical stuff. You get that with anything you translate, because not every word has an exact equivalent in every language.
Yeah, I just immediately gravitate towards philosophy because it's like it's a huge and the reason why is because like in my experience, that is like it's something that if you don't get a translation that's actually faithful to the original, you not only lose the meaning of the word, but you can also completely miss the point. And that's that's really dangerous in some philosophies, because like Nietzsche's nihilistic thoughts, you can lose the impact of some of his statements if your translator doesn't know particular context clues from the German language. Like that's just one instance. Like it's just then there's like the history, like historical context as well. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that can go into getting things lost in a translation. Yeah, well, and my point was that it can happen with the most like mundane. Right. Yeah, that's what chat just said. And
it only gets worse.
Google Translate loses the most.
Oh God, yeah. Have you ever done like the Chinese and Japanese,
Yeah.
like the Asian languages? Oh my god. I feel so bad for them. Like, jeez. Such a rough thing to translate. Because they have multiple words that mean the same thing that one of our words mean.
Oh yeah.
Or at least variations of one of our words.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, and on the flip side though, there's also some really beautiful words in different languages that English has no, there's nothing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then it's cultural too. Like there are languages, like the native Inuit languages have many more words for snow and ice than we do, because it was obviously, more significant part of their lives than where English comes from.
Right.
Another thing I'd want to talk about is the fact that Shin calls out specifically that we are a gray, like we're able to manage the things. Like everybody he's hunted has been a shadow, has fallen too far the dark, but he claims that we seem to be able to walk the line.
Well, we have a flicker of gray in us.
Yes,
which I view that more as
in his mind.
Yeah, I view that actually as more growth on Shin's part than maybe a change in the prey, because I always kind of I kind of see Shin more and more as kind of the Punisher figure in Destiny's universe. Like,
okay,
he's definitely more of a vigilante, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but he views the world in black and white. Like, and when you're that,
and he calls that out.
Oh, no. He is self-aware. Like, he is super self-aware of the fact that he sees things as a binary world. Like, he sees it either you're good or you're bad. And if you're bad, you deserve to be killed. And sorry, I'm going to freak out a little bit. I just got Sorrow's Road completed. So, like, but...
Nice.
Yeah, sorry, this particular piece has been a pain. But like I which also probably explains my fascination with Shin, because I really appreciate that type of, like, in fiction I appreciate those characters.
Or the black and white aspect.
Both, because the black and white aspect is a very it's a very basic template as far as a character goes, but it also has like immense capabilities and immense potential with regards to growth. You see that, like I was just kind of talking about it before we started recording this, you see this with the Punisher in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they have over on Netflix. Throughout the 2 seasons that they have on Netflix with Frank, you actually see him grow, and he actually becomes more complex as you get to know the subtleties and the kind of the intricacies of his own personal madness. In season 2, there's an actual character that gets introduced in season 2 of the Punisher that actually pushes him to do things that he wouldn't normally do. And even in that presentation, he recognizes that he makes a comment about, like, he let people live that he would not have normally let live because of this other character, because they've changed him. And so in Shin's world, you kind of see a similar shift and a similar growth, if you will, in the way that he calls out the fact that he normally would just have gunned down people as soon as they started down this path. Like he's like, that's just the way it is. It's a very spaghetti Western type mentality. But then when he sees our character, for some reason, something, whether that's Jaren Ward's ghost pushing him to do one thing, whether it was, maybe an involvement of Shaxx, maybe the involvement of seeing the Drifter come back, whatever catalyst it was, there was something that sparked a growth in him. And that growth allowed him to be open suddenly to the possibility that things are not good or evil. They can be a combination of the two. There can be shadows, if you will, between the light and the dark, and we just happen to occupy something that is in between them. Does that make sense?
That he can actually recognize that people aren't just black and white necessarily. There's shades in between, you mean?
Yeah, like, I mean, okay, so like I don't know. Like this is again kind of going back to philosophical basis here. It's like the concept of a telos or a free will, right? Like you have the ability to choose your path, and there is no point. And this kind of plays into the concept of predestination, and it's interesting to me because we actually see this quite a bit within Destiny with the Dreaming City curse. You see in the curse of the Dreaming City, you see them in a constant cyclical pattern. And even though they're aware of that pattern, they are stuck in that pattern. That is predetermination. You cannot escape the path for which you have been cast. However, our guardians, because of our paracausal nature, are able to break that loop. We can do things differently each time, even though the loop is still there. It is still stuck in a track, whatever. It's stuck in a rut that it's not going to escape from, though, given this week's revelation, that might not be the case anymore. But, given our paracausal capabilities as guardians of the light, as risen light bearers, whatever you want to call us, because of that, we have the ability to sidestep causal effect. And because we can sidestep that, we can, instead of being cast towards something, we can allow ourselves to be pulled towards something else. We can change our telos. We can change the destination that we are headed towards. We have that capability to choose.
Okay,
Shin,
but
go for it.
The thing within the Dreaming City, technically, the Corsairs could leave too.
I thought that was still open for debate, though, because there was one that kept getting shot. And even though she knew that she was getting shot, she couldn't escape.
Yeah, Amrita they have to stay within that aspect, I guess, if they're critical to it. But they're allowed to leave because I believe I don't remember which week it was, but we basically asked, like, why don't you leave? Why can't you leave?
Okay, so they did call that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know that there was a week that it wasn't a Visit Mara week. It was either is it the first week that Petra, is it Petra first and then Ghost, or is it Ghost and then Petra?
It depends.
Okay.
Last week we got Petra's second week. So.
Yeah, and so like they it's sorry, I'm reading chat. They mentioned, sorry, they're actually talking about this as well. There was a quote from Petra where I think Ghost challenges her about that, and she makes the comment about it being a test, not because it's not being a punishment. But at the same time, I don't know. I just personally got the feeling that it was a matter of they were stuck in a causal loop. That was kind of the curse, was that they were forced to repeat it until that curse was broken, which was the entire point of us trying to break the curse. That's where the frustration that Ghost had and then Mara reciprocated, that frustration was boiling over because everyone is aware that they are stuck in this loop, but not everyone can get out of it.
They need a war mind.
Yeah, I had a different No, you're good. I had a different interpretation of it. But as far as, like, can they leave? The Corsairs are choosing to stay there because the Queen wants them to stay there. They can physically leave. The Guardian,
so they're just adhering to the Queen's wishes, basically?
Yes, which is why Ghost gets so mad, saying that you're holding them there. And why he calls her out. Okay.
I never thought about it like that, but that's a fair point too, because they would be loyal to the Queen in the same way that Aldrin even is to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, I can totally see that.
But as far as, and I'm getting
that doesn't.
From
I mean, you're getting ping. That being the case, though, I think it's still the concept of the ability of a person to change their path, I think is something that Shin, for whatever reason, I think chat's talking about this right now, about because we get a mention of Jaren's ghost like rejecting him and like not acknowledging him and stuff. Chat's talking about maybe Jaren's ghost in pushing Shin maybe to revenge against Ferjaren, he might have created his own personal form of monster in the form of Shin, who became this avenging, like, vigilante figure who was taking justice in his own hands in a way. But Shin has grown and is now capable of actually seeing within, maybe not all Guardians, but at least within our Guardian, he is able to see, maybe it's something familiar because of the way that the draw, the end of the draw, how we kind of almost summon the last word. Maybe that is similar enough for Shin to kind of make him realize that not everything is black and white. And I think that's an awesome facet of his character that really until now we have not gotten to see. And so now he's actually acknowledging the fact that, hey, maybe you are going to be the next generation. You have, and Ulantan, that's another big name that's jumping around right now. He's mentioned this too. The idea that there might be a new Guardian that we see, and that's one that is going to not be light or dark, but maybe something of both. I think that's where I know, because that's I know Mylan did a video on it, and then I know we talked about it the last couple episodes at least, and then also a Dark Mirror, which is the Grimoire anthology, has a number of excerpts from both Callum and Ulantan that kind of touch on that concept as well.
Interesting questions going on from that, for sure. I don't necessarily want to dive into Mara too much, because
right,
especially with what happened recently. But the perspective that, and we've talked a lot about Letters of a Renegade, or Letters from a Renegade, and Shin's perspective on everything and how we're developing there. But I thought it was almost more interesting to read the scribblings of Teb and Gray in the Book of the Unmaking, and how they're really, especially at the end, viewing their progress with these, like, decryptions essentially as not an evil thing per se. Like, they don't view themselves as evil. They view themselves as the heroes of their own story in some ways.
Right. And I'm actually really sad that you missed our chat this last weekend, because we did kind of talk about that particular aspect insofar as what makes an interesting villain is that it's an individual who views themselves as not a villain. Like, a true villain is not going to see themselves as a villain. They're going to see themselves as the hero, and the hero's the villain to them. Like, it's the our army is holier than thou's army situation.
Right.
And I also kind of see Tebin as a moderate, even in the shadows group. Like, Orsa's definitely kind of getting to the darker aspects. Callum's completely lost. But Gray, Tebin, has always been kind of, just from the excerpts that we've seen, he definitely strikes me more as the warlock-esque figure, because he seems to be looking at it as a research opportunity. There's
who the echoes that a lot of this reminds me of? Toland.
Yes.
A lot of this reminds me of Toland, especially the translations of the high text specifically talking about unmaking. It really, really makes me think Toland, even though we don't have any connection between Toland and Yor at this point.
Well, but we also, the other thing that is very interesting and a possible connection there too is that, what were both of these individuals fanatics about? It's kind of hive technology. Toland was all about the death song and the arcane technology, arcane magics, if you will, of the hive. And so are the shadows. They're obsessed with this concept of the unmaking that is required to create a weapon of sorrow, to the degree that they even try to craft themselves into weapons of sorrows when, with regards to, like, I think it was Ghost Fragment Thorn 5, which we talked about, a little bit, with the Legacy of Yor episode. Orsa, which, to be clear, it's assumed it's Orsa, but the individual speaking in the Ghost Fragment Thorn 5 calls out the shadows as being the new weapons of sorrow. Like they speak of unwilling sacrifice and how because of the unwilling sacrifices that they have extracted, they are able to become weapons of sorrow themselves. Mm-hmm. So they're obsessed to the degree that they are actually imbuing themselves with this corruption. Similar to what Yor was doing, albeit Yor, I almost argue, was kind of unconsciously doing it to a degree, at least at first it seems. From what we've seen at it,
according to the lore that we have on them.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and you can argue too that I think Ninja in chat right now is making a comment too. Toland to a degree also supposedly dabbled in making weapons of sorrow. That's where we supposedly get bad juju from. Which bad juju is not in Destiny 2, right?
No, it's not, but I'm pretty sure there's a direct quote from Toland on bad juju in D1.
Yeah, and then there's also the theoretical connection between Red Death and is it Red Spectre? Shadows? No.
Bad juju has the quote,
"Yep.
If you believe your weapon wants to murder all existence, then so it will." Toland the Shattered.
Yeah, that is right off of D1.
Right, and then Red Death was connected to Shadow Price, which was Toland's weapon of choice. And
but
that's
Red Death was not a weapon of sorrow.
And I'm going to defer anyone who's interested in the theory about Red Death really should defer to Unisys on this one, because he has an amazing write-up of this whole concept that I actually kind of buy into. But his argument is that Red Death was actually an experiment to try to create a weapon of sorrow that wasn't corrupted to be a weapon of sorrow.
Okay, it didn't actually have the hive technology.
Yeah. He used Shadow Price as a frame.
The same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is where you get the benefits that Red Death gave you in game, and also where you got the status of an abomination from the Vanguard. So, I mean, there's a number of possible connections between Toland and the Shadows, even, as far as like manipulation and usage of Hive arcane knowledge. And yeah, the Book of Unmaking is really interesting too. It makes me also wonder, timing wise, where this was in relation to Toland in a way. Because I can't remember if Book of Unmaking actually specified when they found the derelict ship.
I don't think so.
As far as timeline, it doesn't. They're, as far as the hand-scrawled notes, they probably have access to it because they're translating from the derelict ship throughout the whole thing. So they are likely on the ship while they're translating, unless they have other script they translated. Because
so there's part of it where it seems like they're on the ship, and then like later it seems like they like went back to the tower because there was this whole negotiation with the Cryptarchs. And trying.
Oh yeah, because didn't Orsa convince a Cryptarch to help him or something?
Yeah, they were like convincing the Cryptarchs to give them stuff, and so it seemed to me, it was my vision of it was that like went to the ship, they did some work on the ship,
they
while
copied
they were there,
all the
and then
stuff down.
They were like, oh, we need some extra stuff, so they went back and had to convince one of the. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, it was sometime later. It's 7 joining. Okay. It was sometime later when Orsa came to me with writings from a Cryptarch's archives. We'd spent a long while attempting to translate the glyphs found on your ship to no avail, which to me is like, and they left. The way that sentence is written. But and then it says we weren't hiding, but we weren't advertising. And it talks about Andelbrask and Cade, and Shax and stuff.
Okay. So maybe they copied all the Hive script off of the ship early on and continued to translate it later, or maybe it weren't even necessarily on the ship very long during the book. Because every single card has a translation as a part of it.
Yeah, and because I know with, sorry, I'm flipping through 4 Whispers, it says they found the craft undisturbed in low orbit. It was synchronized to the exact coordinates of its master's final resting place, which is so it's Dredge and Yor.
Which I want to know where that's at. Is it just over Dwindler's Ridge?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it was chained to the specific coordinates of the ridge. It was not directly linked to the craft's onboard systems, but instead to Desire. The ship was waiting in pained anguish for his return.
Oh, geez.
I want to go to there.
No,
me too.
no, you don't, because it says the hull was more of husk, harsh and jagged from the growth. We'd never seen a ship crusted in the bone of unknown death, but were more intrigued than concerned. The whispers started on approach, faint, hushed. Moments later, our ears began to bleed.
Sound like Eris all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they must have copied it, because he said when you go to Purpose, actually, you know what? For those who are in stream, I will just pull it up because I should have, I believe, this one. Purpose is where he kind of talks about.
Before you read through that one a little bit, it's in Whispers 4 that you were just looking at, that it talks about how they viewed themselves and how others tend to view them, which is interesting. Despite all this, we were not deterred. If anything, Orson, I, and the others who followed were driven by the difficulty of our chosen task. That a guardian could be corrupted, our gifts twisted not by greed or lust or power, by influences beyond petty human desires, was a concern greater maybe than any other. So that
that's in
middle
self.
paragraph.
Sorry, that's in self. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's in self. So that's in 3. So in that specifically makes me they don't view themselves as utterly corrupted at this point. That the influences are beyond their control, that it's not greed or lust or power, that they're viewing themselves as on the path for this, but not necessarily trying to follow the path. There's a lot of interpretation to some of this.
Yeah, and he kind of starts lamenting the fact, too, that were we not honored with our return because of some inherent nobility, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's just the whole why we're risen.
Yeah, and it's like, after all, it feels good to imagine oneself a hero, morally superior, and standing tall on the side of righteous hope. And then he kind of pokes at that. He says, the question we would ask then is simple. How well do we, any of us, truly know ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Which is very, very similar to that of the
Renegade
question of
text?
Osiris.
Oh, see, there's a Renegade quote, too, talking about knowing yourself and being reflective.
But in Purpose, it kind of makes me think that they copied it, because they found a book, which was the Book of Unmaking. Orsa found the scribbled glyphs on thick leather inside the craft that once long ago belonged to Yor. We couldn't identify the origin of the writing at the time, much less translate, though we'd all heard the stories of the Hive, an ancient evil and ancient battle that turned Luna into a forbidden zone. Most held them as folklore, scary stories to counteract our natural curiosity and keep brave guardians from venturing beyond their means. And while we had our theories about Dredge and Yor and how his fall was linked to the nightmare tales of wicked creatures born of bone and shadow, we were cautious not to let assumption guide our inquisition. Purple.
Yes.
So this actually does give us a bit of a time too, because this seems like it would be after the Great Disaster.
Right. But then, you know what I thought? I read this paragraph like 3 times because I was like, if he thinks that it's a legend,
That's folklore.
The ancient battle on Luna is a legend. It's a folklore. Then it happened so long ago that Guardians think it's a legend. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no.
Like,
how long is long enough for an immortal being to think a legend is?
Yeah.
It puts it in perspective
And
too,
especially
the
with
general
something-
timeline of what we're talking about here.
Right, because we're like, like people. And this is why I hate the timeline. But also, like, no, I'm not gonna battle you. Someone's asking to battle me.
Oh
no.
So perspective of Guardians.
Right. Well, okay, but so like it's one thing for it to be like for example, what happened to Saint 14, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Saint 14 just disappeared. We don't know like what happened
Right.
to him. There could be, and then there's lots of like mysteries and people have guesses and like whatever. But this is a battle where thousands of Guardians died.
Right.
Right. So like think about huge battles that we've had in real life in the past and like how significant they are still hundreds of years later. You know what I'm saying? Like it just, I don't know. It just makes the whole thing seem, and then like you have to, I don't know, at least for me, I have to keep reminding myself that like we are, like obviously Guardians can die, but like we are effectively immortal. So it doesn't really matter, but it still kind of does because you can still forget things.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well,
it's just a weird
can you?
thing. Well, apparently, if they thought that the
no. Well, but what I'm saying is like either that or the battle took place before any of the Guardians currently in existence were around.
But Petra was there.
I'm not commenting on that one.
I don't know. Anyway, this is not what we're talking about.
So many dark theories on that one.
So, okay, we've got the guys researching.
Right, so he's researching. And
this is why this is a ledge chat.
Go to my happy place. Research.
Go to my happy
Purple, I love you. This is awesome. Man. Okay, so they're researching, they're doing their thing.
Right. Well, so it really seems, at least from Tebin's perspective, in the notes that he's making, that they're trying to figure out, like, that they recognize that somewhere along the way, Dredge and Yor went wrong.
Right.
And they're like, maybe we can find a way to do it without going wrong.
They're also trying to figure out what the real story is, too. What's not just the folklore, the legends built up to scare children.
Right. And after I read the Book of Unmaking, I actually went back and read The Shadows of Yor card.
Mm-hmm.
From Age of Triumph. And it fits together so nicely. The Shadows of Your card is just like a bunch of individual sentences, and they fit really nicely with the story that is told in the Book of the Unmaking. So if you haven't done that, I really suggest it because it's great. But at the end, it's again like talking about they hide this truth because they fear the consequences of those who would dare follow his footsteps, to tempt the darkness, to allow one's light to be tainted. Few could walk that ledge and not fall completely into despair. So that's on the Shadows of Your card. And then in, I can't find it now. In the Book of the Unmaking, they talk about walking the edge of the ridge and not falling in.
Mm-hmm.
Which card is that? It's one of the end ones.
Going back to that book. I was looking at Renegade for a second. Unmaking. Not unmasking. That is not the word I want. So it's card 6, Focus. Standing on the ridge as the sun fell, Orsa and I held a silent communion.
I want to say that.
Anyway, my point is that it's the same. No. Well, because the shadow card says few could walk that ledge and not fall completely into despair.
Yeah, that's what
but this
I was
was
thinking.
A line.
Okay, there's another one.
Yeah, no, there was a line. God, I should have written it down, but I didn't. See, write it down. Okay, important.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my point is that it fits really nicely together with the Shadows of Your card, and that they're trying to figure out how to accomplish what they think Yor was trying to accomplish without completely abandoning the light. Because it seems like Tebin, like regardless of the rest of them, from Tebin's notes, he doesn't really want, like, he's flirting with the darkness, right? But he doesn't want to really go there. He's like, can we figure out a way to make it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can we stay on this side? Can we use a little bit of darkness to defeat the greater darkness, kind of thing?
Can we utilize it but not get trapped by it?
Right.
I mean, they're kind of talking about that all the way through here, too, in the new stuff.
Yeah. I don't, obviously we don't have tons of information from the rest of the shadows, like Orsa and all the rest of them. But it seems like they're more embracing of it than Tebin is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially Orsa, and obviously Callum.
There's a couple of others that are apparently with them, but they're never named.
One female, because it's brother's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Just
wasn't Orsa a female, though?
No, Orsa is male.
Okay.
No.
But yeah, like that still sticks out to me, and that's from Ghost Fragment Thorn 5. He's like, do you hear it, brothers, sister? I was like, why? Why a singular? Why are we switching from plural to singular there?
Right.
Just one.
Just one. Just you.
It's
just
the token chick.
Yeah. Green.
Why am I the token chick?
Because you're the only one that has the Dredgen title.
Really? We're calling that out now?
We already called it. We already called it out when you weren't at our episode last weekend. we were like, that's why she's not here. She doesn't want to.
That is not you.
Talk about it.
Stink. This, I knew being gone, I was going to have something like said. I would either have to like do or fulfill or like defend the next time I saw you two. Lord. Gosh. All right. Okay, so what else did you guys notice about the Last Word stuff or the Unmaking books or book? Anything stand out like major to you? Not all at once.
I mean, so I think it is worth calling out in Secrets. We see a bit of where did it go? He says, yours etchings were a roadmap, arcane and cryptic, but with specific intent. Old research hinted at mysterious tomes labeled as Books of Sorrow. It was theorized by researchers long before our time that the Hive had their own set of holy texts, evidence of which had been gathered before the Great Disaster. Which,
right.
I'm still trying to fix my temporal understanding of that piece. These books were believed to be archives of Hive ritual and history, chronicling royal bloodlines and varied ceremonies and rites of passage. We were uncertain of the place yours etchings held in the overall picture of Hive legend, but they fit our understanding of these fabled books. As such, through hubris or educated conclusion as a distinction I'll leave to others to decide, we chose to collect our translation in accordance as a new entry to the supposed Library of Sorrow. A seventh book, we called it. And writing this now upon reflection in the last days before the next stage in our journey, I know we were right to do so. So this is the reason actually was, like I had mentioned first, this kind of explains where the seventh book, the 13th understanding of the seventh book of Sorrow.
Right. But it still doesn't, because we don't get the 13th understanding. It only goes to 9.
Yeah, no,
right.
I'm
but
very
there's
yes.
the
But I also do like how sorry to flip through here. I do like how it gives a nod to so to go back to our conversation about translations, we are getting a translation of a translation of a translation of the text. Like we are getting translations like twice or three times removed of the actual text. So we we got to be careful there.
Never called it a Book of Sorrow. That's something that the Shadows later called it.
Yes. Yor refers to the Books of Sorrow, but he
doesn't call his translations the Book of Sorrow.
And actually, Yor's etchings were a roadmap to find out about the Books of Sorrow. So these were like the scribbling notes of his research. I mean, and the three of us, I mean, we've all done this. The notes of our research are not anywhere close to what's actually going on in the brain when you're doing the research. Like it's the it's the tip of the iceberg. Like if you looked at notes from any particular person while they're researching stuff, it can be anywhere from a really well connected thing to the most disjointed and disconnected, etchings, if you will. The word etchings kind of makes me think of like scribbles. It's
like Post-it notes.
Yeah, it's the one that we always make fun of Bife with the lore, the warlock on the wall.
You mean the Bife on the wall?
The Bife on the wall. But yeah, and this goes back to where in the timeline, if you will, this whole thing is taking place. Like, theorized by researchers long before our time, evidence of which had been gathered before the Great Disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So we know, first off, that they have not obviously seen the calcified fragments that we get, because we get those directly from the Dreadnought, right? So they do not have the Books of Sorrow, obviously. But this is talking about notes that were taking place before the Great Disaster, but when we knew about the Hive. So that, it starts to narrow down a little bit as far as you can narrow down the ambiguous timeline that is there. But it also then points out that it's researchers long before our time.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes back to my question, my problem there. It's like, what is a long time to someone who doesn't even care about the passage of time?
Well, I mean, we don't know. it could be a long, long time. It could be a very short period of time. There's no way to be able to gauge that.
Well, and then, yeah, and I mean, Pins in chat's making the point, Burning Lake. We know about Burning Lake, you know, and Burning Lake did take place before the Great Disaster. That was when Shax was clued in to the magic of the swords, or the mysteriousness of the swords, because that was the whole kicking the door in on the consensus situation.
Mm-hmm. Timelines are so thinking wonky in this game. Because
and the addition of the Dreaming City, and the presence of skipping, like with the Stranger and the Vex possibly, don't really help that.
Saint 14 and...
Well, yeah, Marty McFly over there.
Pretty much. Okay, so...
But no, I was just going to say, this particular book, which is, again, 8, which is Secrets from the Book of Unmaking, I really think kind of helps kind of give a sense of where this thing kind of lies.
The deciphering aspect.
Yeah, as much as you can when everything else is ambiguous. Like, I'm not saying that we have like certain answer here, but it definitely helps kind of start narrowing down stuff.
It does. So they got the etchings. What do you think of the actual translations themselves? Because like my first impression of them, just reading them, granted, I know that this is written by a group that is following the hive, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but the whole idea of the basic premises of what they're presenting, it reads very much so as a self-reflection. It's somewhat Buddhist, in my opinion.
I was about to say, yeah, it's very enlightened. Eastern. It's very enlightenment aspect. The very first thing, or the very first one, Cages, is talking about how flesh and mind are cages, and how you need to become free. Like, taken out of context, most of these understandings are they're not necessarily bad. Like the first understanding, evolution is claimed only through our unmaking. I mean, it's not necessarily great, but it's not necessarily evil.
It depends on what your definition of unmaking is.
Well, but also, it doesn't as well, because the way you get stronger is by destroying your muscles. Like, your physical strength is done through tearing of your own body. Like, and
the
growth,
rebuilding of it afterwards.
Right. But it never, like, that's what I mean, is like evolution requires sacrifice. And that doesn't mean necessarily, again, given there's no context in that statement, you could either be really okay with that statement, or it could be really bad. And the second understanding is mortal flesh is a prison that makes liars of our beautiful caged minds. I mean, yeah, that's like intellectualism at its core. It's not anything necessarily wrong with that. The third understanding is know thyself in honest ways, or falter in light of your truest self. Again, without context, that's not necessarily dark. That's just, that's like one of the basic tenets of philosophy. Is know yourself. Now the fourth is where it kind of starts going down. Fourth is, on the path of the hushed tones, the cutting word will guide your unmaking. Okay, so now we're starting to get a little bit into the dark here, because that's I don't have a lot of defense on that one. Fifth is lose yourself not in the whisper's words, but in their purpose. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a, I mean, like, I don't really, that's again, that's kind of out of context. It's not necessarily dark. Sixth is let go of all that is to come, to linger here on the promise of rewards yet earned will see you lost, never to return. That's like, also, I mean, that's not a bad thing. Like, that's let go of material greed. You know, that's not, again, okay. So far we're on 6, and we've only had one that's actually kind of uncomfortable.
Point dark. Mm-hmm.
7th is only through a joining of the known and unknown can your path be made new. Okay, I mean, this is starting to feel like fortune cookies, because this is like, I mean, and I don't mean that facetiously. But I mean, like, you can. It's just like this is like reading freaking oh, what are they? The horoscopes, right? You know, it's like,
oh yeah.
I mean, depending on who's reading these, the interpretation can be completely whatever. Now 8, I can see this one being a little bit questionable. No pain that it may teach you all you never imagined possible. Okay.
So even with that, where the knowing pain, some aspects of not necessarily Buddhism, like what most people think in the West of Buddhism, but there are sects of it where understanding pain and the letting go of pain is part of it. Pain is you're grasping onto an aspect of it. You're grasping onto either your own self, or the desire for something, the desire not to feel it. So it's like a lot of them will do the extreme and try to get out of it. So it's the
argument for hedonism.
Yeah.
Hedonism is the love of pleasure, basically. It's the seeking of pleasure, the avoidance of pain, basically. And so you'll find that, and Green, you broke up a little bit there at the beginning, but I think what you're trying to say is, like, you kind of find that in a lot of teachings, is that you need to acknowledge your pain. You need to come to terms with it. You can't avoid pain, because pain is useful. There is, you know, we were talking about this with the evolution piece. There is a point to pain.
You can't know pleasure without pain.
But you also, there's pain. I mean, there's that, but there's also, like, the argument for, like, survival. The classic example is a kid who puts his hand on the stove. It burns. It hurts. But you know what? The kid probably won't do it again, because that's kind of how, as humans, we learn. Is that hurt? Let's not do that. That's how, you know, physical creatures, that's where it is, which I have a philosophical conundrum with that, but whatever. Anyways.
Right.
Well, because my problem with that is, like, book 1 is all about escaping the body, but then book 8 is like, no, you need to accept the pain that your body gives you. It's like, okay, so do you want us to go, or do you want us to stay? This is like what's the Notebook?
Well,
what do you want?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it wants you to get out of your head, but it also wants you to understand. I mean, it's a lot of reflection. Right.
Yeah. Now I have the shadows of your being, what's his face, stuck in my head. The 9th understanding is, do not linger on the coming embrace. Your unmaking is yours alone, a solitary journey devoid of peace. So yeah, I don't have a defense on that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty dark.
Like, I mean, like, I could make, let's see, hang on. I mean, like, okay, so to be clear also, these are the understandings, so this is kind of like the summary of each of the entries, I guess, in the books.
It's like verses?
Yeah, the verses themselves, the verses are not as easy to defend as some of the summary statements are. Like, Embrace has, Yeah, no, there's some fun
As the
ones in that.
white noise of your
Yeah.
screams drowns the whispers, you will feel
That's
alone.
The one that my eyes keep going back to. It's like, yeah, I don't got any defense on that one for you. No, I was gonna say though, like, you know, this is kind of the concept of everyone dies alone too, is in a way it's passing the responsibility on, like, you are responsible for yourself, right? Only you can actually complete this, you know, quote, air quotes here, unmaking, which is what they've obviously become obsessed with. Now, I don't know, like, it just, like, again, out of context, I can see maybe an argument for this not being as super dark as it is. But yeah.
I mean, it can be. I don't know. That one's probably the hardest to reconcile.
Yeah.
But
the fourth in this one is, yeah, because the other one that keeps coming up is, yet you will know through the pain and through the fear, there is no longer a you that was, only what comes next, and all the pain to follow.
Well, okay, so
okay, that's fun.
Here's an example of that, and I can actually speak to this because I have a friend who does that ultra marathoning.
Oh yeah,
She ran 61 miles, and past a certain point, you just kind of, there's pain, but you kind of go numb to it. Not necessarily numb to the pain itself, but numb to the agony of it, so to speak. And you just keep going.
Yeah, there's a point at which numbness is just there.
Well, like, your nerve endings can only fire so fast and they get tired.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason when we're torturing people, we have to give them breaks. Keep that in mind, kids.
Oh, gosh. Dark. Talk about dark. Let's see here. All right. So, is there anything that you noticed with, well, you're not all the way through the quest yet. Purple, have you seen all the way through the quest, or have you played all the way through the quest yet?
I have not played through it. I did watch a little bit of it on YouTube this afternoon, but
Blue, have you seen the last little bit with Drifter?
Which part? The one before the conversation or the one after the conversation?
After the conversation.
I have not. I mean, I just got to the conversation, so I haven't gotten past it yet.
So Drifter's not expecting you to bring back Last Word.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this. I did read this. Like, I read that he's surprised.
He's surprised and a little furious and gets like a little angry and a little dark. But then he starts cracking up and making jokes at the end of it. Like, hey, we're still buddies, right? Kind of thing. But he doesn't trust us. Or at least he doesn't trust that gun, for sure.
Well, you know, given the statement that you get from I always mispronounce it, malfiance, whatever the hell the M one,
malfeasance,
that one. Given his call to arms that's in that particular gun, it's not a surprise that he doesn't trust it. I mean, he knows full well what that gun is.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, though,
Dino's helping me out in chat.
So, gosh, good
malfeasance. That just sounds. Yeah, let's just call it the bad hand cannon.
Thank you, Ninja.
Maltzers. The Maltzers. Yes. So yes, Drifter's response. Green, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. I'm just waiting for my audio to go back to green because I don't know why it's being weird today. So Drifter gives us a piece. Where does Drifter get the piece?
The what?
The piece that he gives us to start this whole quest.
He got. I don't remember where he got the individual, like the it's like a shroud thing. Like the shroud wrapped thing that we're supposed to translate or whatever. Because like the thorn piece he gets from the helmet that we bring back.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's like, oh, this is going to be like, that's where a lot of people were, I think, were connecting this with Thorn. And then, which was
also, that's a Titan helmet that we bring back.
Yes, it is.
Do we have any idea which Titan helmet it is? Because I tried to do a comparison, and all those Titan helmets look exactly the same to me because I don't play Titan.
It's obviously I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I was trying to remember who the oh gosh, is it Sagoth? No. Who is the freaking Titan with the Iron Lords?
Sagoth, one of them that had a helmet that was an artifact back in V1.
Yeah, the one that was like,
oh yeah.
The one that he was like, he's the one that gave them the nickname Wolves, and Saladin got all uppity with him.
Mm-hmm.
And who was it? Peyrun was like, I like it. I think it was Peyrun.
Yeah, so Sagoth was the warlord that
Felwinter smashed.
No, that was
Peyrun, Saladin, and Radagast protected a town from Lord Sagoth, and then Sagoth.
Because Sagoth's head was the talisman or whatever.
Dino says it's the parade helmet, which would be the initial helmet you get in D2.
Ah.
So the very, very first thing when you lose your light.
Well, that would make sense then. A thorn shot to the face when you don't have light is going to be kind of unfortunate for you.
Oh, sadness. Especially if it's one of those freaking proto-thorns. Dear Lord, that's stupid. I'm sorry.
Because I know that transitions into, oh, hey, your friend died. We should go look at this. And that was all about from, that was from the one before the etched crystal nonsense.
I don't know what's happening on the other side of the room, but I just looked up and Ninja's just giving the finger to the screen.
He's on the last part. I bet he's on the last part, isn't he? Is he in the same room?
He said to tell you that he's uploading something. Oh, he's uploading a video clip.
He didn't do it on the first try.
He said he's uploading it right now.
Surely he didn't do it on the first try.
Yeah, first try. He said first try done. He's uploading it right now.
But he wouldn't have been giving the screen a finger unless, I mean, that's impressive. If he actually did it, that's impressive.
Okay. He says he got trapped outside the middle room and he had to kill him with the one with the crystal, and he had to kill himself to get into the room, and that's why it starts with the Guardian down screen.
I don't know.
Sounds awfully convenient to me.
Where do you upload it to? Twitter?
Hold on. He's doing, I don't know. It's uploading it now. So I will let you know when it's there.